Hello everyone! We're doing something a little different today, which this time is code for, I wasn't really planning to do a whole video on this, but here we go! Let's take a look at the 1991 adaptation of Patricia MacLachlan's award-winning children's book, Sarah, Plain and Tall. This was a Hallmark Hall of Fame production that aired on CBS, starring Glenn Close and Christopher Walken. I read the book in 3rd grade with the rest of my class, and then we watched this movie. I think we might have also read the 2nd book and watched the 2nd movie, but I'm not so sure about that. My memory is fuzzy on those details. This was my first time revisiting the film, and before I did so, I decided to revisit the book as well. Anna and her little brother Caleb are tentatively excited when their father, Jacob Whitting, announces he has started corresponding with a woman named Sarah Wheaton who lives in Maine, with the idea that she might come out to their farm to become their new mother. Sarah arrives for a month-long trial visit, and instantly everyone likes her and her cat Seal, and she likes them too, but she misses her coastal home and longs for the sea. Sensing her torn feelings, Anna and Caleb fear she'll change her mind and return to Maine. It's a great book dealing with serious topics in a way that's accessible and engaging for children, but it's a pleasant read for adults as well. Even though it had been ages since I read it, I found that I recognized certain imagery, so the writing must have made an impression on my young mind. It's a sweet story, simple but nuanced, and full of unspoken emotions. Considering the book was a hit and won the Newbery Medal, it's no surprise they made a film out of it a few years later. It's only about 60 pages though, so to fill a 90-minute movie, they beefed it up with additional drama and tension. As movies do. Anna in the book is apprehensive, making note of everything Sarah says and does that indicates her longing for home. She fears Sarah will inevitably choose to go back there. But she is not against Sarah's coming, and she definitely wants Sarah to stay. In the film, she's more hostile and politely rebuffs Sarah's overtures of friendship, making a wider gulf for Sarah to cross in order to form a connection. Part of the problem is that Anna, already skeptical, spots a one-way train ticket back to Maine in Sarah's drawer. The film also builds up the late wife and mother as a lingering presence. Caleb doesn't remember her at all and asks a lot of questions. Anna is upset that her memories are fading, and Jacob doesn't seem to want to discuss his wife at all. This is the situation that Sarah is dropped into, so on top of her own doubts, she is struggling to determine if the Whitting family will be able to move forward together or not. The book, on the other hand, really doesn't delve much into the concepts of grief and acceptance. As for the father, the film makes a lot more out of Jacob being a man whose will is law, and everyone in his household is to comply with what he says. He doesn't expect Sarah to take part in what he considers to be man's work, and when she shows not just a willingness but an eagerness to help him work the fields or repair the roof, he's against it. They've also jacked up Sarah's stubbornness and independence, so the two of them butt heads and even argue. In the book, the story is told from Anna's perspective, so there are presumably conversations between Jacob and Sarah that she is not privy to, and therefore neither are we. You might not think of it as a kid, but reading it as an adult, I inferred it, and the film develops scenes that are suggested by the book, and then adds more besides. It also introduces a local odd-job man who has been to Maine. This gives Sarah someone to talk to about her beloved home, and the guy becomes a bit of a rival. But most of the tension between Sarah and Jacob arises from a clash of wills, and Sarah not being sure how attached to his wife he still is. Now, I've pointed out all these changes, but they're not to be taken as criticisms. Given the two different mediums, the changes make sense. The book was written for young readers, so naturally it focuses on the children, and the emotions are simpler. The film is for general audiences, designed to appeal to both children and grown-ups, so it splits the perspective and has more complex concepts. Nevertheless, it is a faithful adaptation, and I should mention that Patricia MacLachlan herself co-wrote the teleplay. Glenn Close, who was also a producer on the film, is really good here. Not quite as plain and tall as Sarah is supposed to be, perhaps. Glenn Close is only 5'5", but she brings a lot to the character. Sarah is a single woman whose brother is about to get married. Her brother makes a brief appearance here, played by the late James Rebhorn. When I was a little kid, I didn't fully understand Sarah's situation in Maine and why she's so eager to escape it and make things with the Whittings work out. Now, I do. She's been running her own household this whole time. We don't know exactly how long it's been, but we can gather it's been years. She's been in charge of the kitchen, the shopping, the decorating, hosting duties. Now, with her brother getting married, all of that will change. His wife's going to move in, and Sarah will be supplanted as mistress of the house. Everything will be done her way, and Sarah, who can't just move out given the time period, will be subject to her new sister-in-law's whims. In reality and in fiction, such an arrangement almost never works out to the satisfaction of all parties. The prospect is so bleak for Sarah that going way out west, far from the home and sea she loves, to be a mail-order bride to a complete stranger and to help raise his 2 kids is the more palatable option. It's still a scary one, though. What if the man she has traveled such a long distance to marry is unfriendly? What if he's disgusting? What if he drinks? What if he's abusive? There are so many possible bad outcomes here. I know there are a ton of movies and novels out there that romanticize the whole mail-order bride thing, but really, yikes. The adaptation emphasizes Sarah's anxiety, remember the train ticket? And the way Close interprets the role, her doubts are often just near the surface, even as she's trying to make the best of an awkward moment. But Sarah is also strong, willful, and even a little sassy. It was funny for me seeing Glenn Close in this as a kid, because at that time, my favorite movie was 101 Dalmatians, and Glenn Close is wildly different in that. And she's wildly different here than she is in other roles she's played. She's one of those actresses. But as a little kid who laughed hysterically at her Cruella de Vil, seeing her in this subtle, dramatic role was kinda crazy. And I bet most people would say the same about Christopher Walken. This is a very different kind of role for him. And even as a kid, I was aware of who he was, and I knew that this was a strange casting decision. But as you watch the film, I think you find he's not such a weird fit, especially with the way the character's written. Jacob is a good and gentle man, but he's emotionally distant, kind of brusque, and touchy about certain subjects. They also gave him a bad haircut, but I think that's intentional. Anna's the one who's been cutting Caleb's hair, so maybe she does her father's too, or he cuts it himself. Either way, it's a nice detail, like the strings holding the bib up on his overalls, or the faded patch on the seat of Caleb's pants. These are signs that the family is in need of a woman's touch. Or his haircut wasn't supposed to look bad, and I'm just being mean. Anyway, I think it's nice that Christopher Walken got a rare opportunity to do a heartwarming family drama. At this point in his career, he had already established a reputation for eccentricity, a reputation that would just grow and grow as time went on, and he'd done darker, heavier roles, so this was probably a refreshing departure. Personally, I prefer him in comedies. I love him in Blast from the Past as Brendan Fraser's bomb shelter building dad, and his role in Hairspray was the only part of that movie that made me laugh. But he proves here that he can play normal fairly convincingly, and even if he does look kind of ghoulish in a couple close-ups, he is very good in some of the more emotional scenes. His character is conflicted and unsure, and I think Walken's naturally hollow or haunted expression is rather fitting. As for the two kids, they're pretty good. Caleb is a sweet little boy, kind of precocious, played by Christopher Bell, and Anna, played by Lexi Randall, comes across as over-serious and a little uptight, a girl who's been trying to fill her mother's shoes. There are moments when they can seem a little stiff, especially early on, but they're child actors in a made-for-TV period piece, so I cut them some slack. What amazes me is that all 4 of these actors came back to make more movies. Eventually, Patricia MacLachlan wrote 5 books in the series. Sarah Plain and Tall was published in 1985, Skylark was published in 1994, Caleb's Story was published in 2001, More Perfect Than the Moon in 2004, and lastly, Grandfather's Dance in 2008. The film series is a trilogy: Sarah Plain and Tall from 1991, Skylark from 1993, and Winter's End from 1999. Skylark the film actually came out before Skylark the book, but MacLachlan worked on the screenplay and the narratives are essentially the same. Ditto for Winter's End and Caleb's Story, which both introduce the Whitting's grandfather. And incidentally, Winter's End marks the last known screen appearances for both Lexi Randall and Christopher Bell. I've always been impressed that Glenn Close and Christopher Walken were willing and able to come back and do the 2 sequels. So many times with things like this, they can't get the big-name actor to come back, so they either have to write the character out, which in this case would be impossible, or recast them, which would have been disastrous. I think the fact that they did come back to these comparatively modest projects is a testament to their commitment to the story and the characters, and their appreciation of how deeply the story resonates with viewers young and old. Those are my thoughts on Sarah Plain and Tall. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll be back next Saturday. Thanks for watching.